This is the latest in our series of conversations with political leaders, and it's a delight to have Joe Anderson, the Liverpool City Mayor, in the downtown den this afternoon. Joe obviously has been at the sharp end of trying to sort out some of the government packages that have been put together for business, whilst as well ensuring that the care services that Liverpool City Council is responsible for have been as effective and as efficient as they possibly can be during this very difficult and challenging time. So, Joe, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be with you, Frank.
Yeah, and let's just start off with those social care challenges that you've been facing, because we're well aware of the difficulties that you've had in terms of budgets. 10 years of cuts, difficult for any organisation to take, and you've had significant difficulties in terms of trying to manage those budgets year on year. We had a conversation not too long ago where business organisations like ourselves were going to join forces with the council and actually go to central government and say enough is enough. But I think when something like this happens, it does focus people's minds on the importance of ensuring that those critical services are not undermined in the way that they have been.
Yeah, and I think it then is a question of people expect us to get on with the things that a lot of people just assume the council does as a but just because of its what it is as an organisation, but it's much more difficult and much more complex than that. For instance, the social care elements. In terms of for our homes, there's about 94 homes within the city, private sector homes, but we've been given them support, not only in terms of PPE, but also individual support in terms of making sure that they had enough staff and enough experience to cope with that, working in partnership with Merseycare, for instance, and the clinical commissioning groups. So we've been very much at the forefront of the partnership approach to all this. And just ahead of the lockdown, I chair a group which is the Health and Wellbeing Board, which consists of all the major players and partners in health, as well as including the police, the ambulance service, the NHS, the doctors, the GPs, representatives, the care homes. Everybody comes together. So we put in some plans, if you like, to make sure that we were ahead of the curve. And even in, for instance, where you might see these new facilities, these Nightingale facilities opening in one in Greater Manchester, which covers the northwest, but Birmingham and places. We've been working with the Royal, with Classerbridge, with Merseycare, as I say, our partners, with our everybody within the city, to make sure that we've got decants so we can take people out of hospital and put them into places that they're not dependent on. So as we've stopped eclectic operations and things happening in hospitals, and we've decanted and moved people out of hospitals and into accommodation in other places, and we're actually developing some of them, we've freed up probably somewhere around about 700 to 800 beds within the system, within the whole estate, so that we've got provision. So we've been doing a lot of things behind the scenes that people wouldn't see that we've been doing, but we're also supporting the care homes, using some of the money that's coming through from central government. We got £20 million 2 weeks ago, and that directly went into supporting care and care homes and care facilities, including paying for extra staff and giving staff overtime, giving higher rates of pay for staff and stuff to do the things that they do. So there's a plethora of stuff being going on, Frank, behind the scenes, but I think we're in a really good place. Where the pandemic is in the city, I expect the infection rate to start to, if you like, level off now and maybe drop. So we might see for another week or 10 days, we might see the death rate continuing to rise for a little bit before it starts to turn. But, you know, I'm proud of what we've done in the city and proud of the support that the city's given to, you know, institutions, including the health service and stuff. But, you know, private care homes or GP practices. And I have to say, you know, public health and the Royal and you know, 8th Street has now merged as a trust, and everybody else has been working really good, really closely together. So I think that's why we're seeing, if you like, I think personally, the success that we've had in managing this from a health point. So I said all credit to everybody in the team that's pulling together and doing it.
And in terms of that collaborative approach, Joe, it's something that you've brought to the table in terms of business support as well. You're regularly in touch with ourselves and other business associations across the city, talking about how you can, firstly, of course, get these grants out of the door that the government have agreed to. No small challenge there, because again, you know, the duty was given to yourselves in terms of, right, you administered that fund. I'm not sure whether you were given additional staff and resource to carry that function out. I can see by your face that I can guess the answer to that. But nonetheless, you know, we've been obviously looking at other cities and their performance in this area. And although there will be people out there who are still frustrated, not necessarily getting the answers they want, the city is ahead of the game in terms of getting money out of the door. Do you want to, again, just quickly talk about the processes that have been gone through? Because
yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things that what we're seeing from central government is central government making announcements without really thinking them through. So they're great at coming up with these initiatives. You know, every day they come into these press conferences saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then they passport the responsibility onto local authorities, to cities, to actually deliver on that. And that was a case, you know, with the civils grants and, you know, with the support to businesses. It was a question of, oh, we're going to do this, and then passport that responsibility on. And then even, you know, right up until sort of the day we were trying to push on and start to give the grants out, we were getting told, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. They changed the rules right up until, you know, I think midnight on the day we were trying to go live with them. It was like state aid stuff. You've got to check this, you've got to check. So we had all kinds of things to do. And I think, again, you know, our staff, the Easter weekend, you know, Good Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, they worked right through that. And I think to date, we've pushed out £44 million worth of grants. I think everybody who's applied has been sorted. There's a number of people haven't applied, but what we've done is done what we were asked to do. And all credit to our staff, because, you know, they worked right across the bank holiday weekend and have been working, you know, 12-hour shifts delivering this. And we had to train people up to do it as well. So, you know, again, we've done what's been asked. I know it caused really major problems for businesses, especially the small businesses, and that was a real worry and concern for us. But I think we're in a good position now. I think we're in a better position than most other cities in terms of what we've done, and we'll continue to do that. And as you know, we've had conversations this morning about, you know, how we continue to try to support businesses. Now we try to push government to extend the support even further. So, you know, there's a long way to go yet, but I think, again, in terms of what we were asked to do, we've done. And I think, you know, we were well ahead of the game in terms of delivering on that.
You've indicated there, Joe, that there are some businesses that will be disappointed, have fallen through the stools of business support packages that the government have announced. And again, I know that the city is engaged with government to suggest that they need to start to tweak some of that criteria in order for many of our businesses to fall into that category to get that necessary support moving forward.
Yeah, and you know, look, I think one of the things as well is that when we engage with officials in Whitehall and when we talk to them, you know, they are, if you like, somewhat oblivious and ignorant of how things work. You know, they just think that it's one homogenous group, and everybody does the same thing, and the world of business is different. We know that, you know that, your members know that. You know, people working in smaller units that don't have the rateable value, some people that working in sharing units with other businesses, some people working from home. There's a whole different, different scenarios for business and how they work and how they operate. So we've got to try and get that message across to government. And, we equally, the number of people that have not yet claimed for the civils, for the support, we've delivered, I think it's probably around about 40% of those entitled to claim have not yet claimed. So, we're trying to make contact with them to say, please claim, you can claim, and trying to encourage them. And that's why, again, I said to yourself this morning, but to the Chamber and to others, to actually encourage members, to take up the offer and try to get people to apply for it. But yeah, we've got to continue to convince the Whitehall officials and ministers that there's so much more to do in terms of to support business. What we've done so far is it's okay. It's not good enough really, but it's okay. But it's got to be continued. So where we are now is the sort of start of the process. We've got to support business in the medium and the long term here as well. Otherwise, a lot of these businesses will go under and not come back. So it's a question of how we articulate that to government and how we make them understand the business needs. So, what I said again, sorry to refer this to again a conversation that we had this morning, but the reality is we've got to get businesses to back us arguing that and to give us the evidence to make sure that we articulate that case to central government.
And as well as undertaking those conversations to try and ensure the futures of existing businesses, you're already thinking about what comes next and the strategy for getting us out of this crisis. And, let's face it, maintaining the momentum that Liverpool was nicely building prior to this in terms of economic growth and regeneration, all those great things that we were talking about, as I say, only a couple of months ago at the airport. So brought some people in to help us do that. And I know that you're keen, Joe, that, as I say, once we get through this thing, we can hit the ground running as a city and get our business community back up and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, let's be absolutely clear, and all of you tuning in, this city will come out of this, and this city will come out of it stronger and stronger than most. And I promise you that will happen. This city will come through this. This city will be as vibrant and as positive as it was 6 weeks ago as it will be in 6 months' time. I promise you we will come out of this. So we've got to, as I've always believed, lead the way. We've got to set the bar high, and we've got to lead by example in what we can and what we should be doing. So, for me, we've engaged Metro Dynamics. Some people might know Mike Hemrick. He did the Manchester Independent Economic Review and other things. He's well respected in government. And so we're engaging with government already, talking about what the city needs and how the city can actually support and continue that growth that we were on, that growth trajectory that we were on, and we want to make sure that we pick that up again. But let's be clear, there are many things that were planned to happen that will still happen. They will still go ahead. So it's about what we do to support businesses and those who are particularly affected by this. Now, sector by sector, we need to address that and look at what we can do to support. Now, whether that's the tourism, hospitality, the creative and digital sector, the science and science tech sector, the universities, businesses, the hotels, everybody in the different sectors, we need to look at what we can do to support. Now, there's some money being put aside by the CA. We've got to make sure that is accessed immediately by businesses, and there's no bureaucracy or shit, as I call it, that ties it up, that it's actually made available to businesses, to support businesses to actually get on with things. But my point from when I spoke at the airport, and I consistently and confidently talk about the best days for us lying ahead, that's still the case. We'll still have 5 miles of development on the waterfront ready to go. We'll still have the Paddington Village operation. We'll still have the Garden Festival site. We'll still have 10 streets. We'll still, have the Edge Lane to go at. We'll still have the housing that we're going to be building. And I want to make sure that we use the housing development opportunities that we've got within the city to help support, building construction sector and actually look at creating jobs. So all of those things are going to happen from our point of view. What I want to make sure is that we've got the tools and the support in place to help businesses. That's crucial. It's no good having, strategic investment funds sloshing around in the combined authority, or gain share money sloshing around in the combined authority, which was supposed to be used for supporting new businesses and growth within the sectors, different sectors, just lying there and letting businesses close, because then we're going to have to try and restart them again. So I want to try to re-emphasize the fact that the money should be used to try to sustain business, try to keep businesses operating and going. So that's the plan. But there'll be no lack of ambition from us in 4 weeks, 5 weeks time. There'll be no lack of opportunity. I'll be one of the first things that I'll be doing once the lockdown ends is meeting with yourselves, meeting with businesses, having a gathering where we can talk about not just the vision but the plan, because it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. We have to start to make people believe that Liverpool is coming out of the blocks. Liverpool knows what it's doing. Liverpool will be leading the way. That's why we've got investment coming in the past. That's why we've got a lot of interest in Liverpool and what Liverpool's doing. And we've got that now. We've got that now. We've got businesses, we've got investors, we've got developers who are talking to us about getting involved again immediately after the lockdown. So, I'm confident we'll be able to pick things up again. And if our universities don't start to thrive again, if our businesses don't thrive again, if our events, our hospitality sector don't thrive again, then we all start to dip. We've got to lift everybody up and raise all boats with the tide and make sure that we deliver. And, I promise you, there's nobody going to be working harder than me to make this city come back to where it was 6 to 8 weeks ago and actually start making it, even more prosperous and even more stronger than what it was.
You've mentioned the combined authority a couple of times there, Joe, and obviously an awful lot of the money that's being made available from government is being passported through combined authorities. Again, I know how hard you've worked to improve collaboration across the Liverpool City region. Not that long ago, where every single local authority worked in their own silo and there was no cooperation at all. And I think we all welcome the fact that that's changed and moved on and progressed. But I've raised concerns with you and the Chief Executive, Tony Reeves, and indeed with the combined authority, that the city has still got to be seen as the economic driver. And what we can't have is this, what I call race to the bottom almost, of, okay, we've got X millions of pounds to invest, let's divide that by 6 and let everybody get on and do their own thing. Because the city has got to be seen, in my opinion, and I know yours, as the driver for us to come out of this as quickly as we can.
Well, the fact is, the city is the economic driver. That's the reality, isn't it? It's not called the Liverpool City region for anything other to emphasise that point. And, when I remind people, as I often do, that, 70+% of the people that work in the city of Liverpool actually come into the city from the region. So it's vital that the city is at the heart of the growth, because the way St Helens and the way the Wirral and the way Sefton and Knowsley in particular benefits is from having a strong city. So, you know, we have to make sure that, you're right, we don't dilute the opportunity that we have for growth within the city, that will drag everybody upwards rather than downwards. And that's the, you know, that's the view that not only do I have, and it's not me saying that as the city mayor, it's me saying that as an Al Grandad who knows what I'm talking about and has been around for a long time, is to know and understand that you have to have a hub to drive the spokes and the wheel, and that's what the city is. And so, you know, you're right to say that progress is being made. Listen, I led the where we are in terms of bringing people. We never had a combined authority until I became leader of the city of Liverpool, and I then dragged us to have a combined authority, and then negotiated the deal with central government. So I'm fully aware of how the devolution agenda and the combined authorities can work. It can work really well, but it's got to know and understand what its role is and what it should be doing and how it should be doing it. And I think to try to create a situation where you know, we forget about the hub, we forget about the economic centre, the city, it will be to the detriment of every local authority within the city region. So we've got to make sure that we argue that case and make that particular case, because it's important, and that applies not just to the Liverpool city region, by the way. That applies to, you know, all of the city regions across the country. It's the cities that are the driving force. That's why we've got a region around it.
Yeah. You know, we're absolutely on the same page as far as that's concerned. And just talking about some of those exciting initiatives that we were so looking forward to. Again, I think if you look back at what's been prioritised over the last few years, you've put an awful lot of time and investment into the Knowledge Quarter around science, health and innovation. Now, talk about foresight. You know, we are at the centre of the universe in terms of trying to find plans to get us out of the crisis and to find a cure, a vaccine for coronavirus. And of course, the Knowledge Quarter already has been a hugely successful initiative. And I'm guessing that there's even more focus and emphasis on that part of the city now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, in many ways, we actually lead the way. You know, the School of Tropical Medicine being here, the work that the universities do, you know, our pharmaceutical companies here, you know, Seqirus and others up in Speak, massive companies ready to fly out the blocks and delivering vaccines, but equally we've got people who are working hard, not just within the city, but with other cities as well, trying to develop things. And it was good to see what Oxford are doing this morning in terms of trialing vaccines. So yeah, I think we're in a really good position to take advantage of that, Frank. To be honest with you, you know, we are already having conversations and talking to people about how we can take advantage of that. So yeah, there are many as in all cases where you have adversity, usually coming out of that are opportunities, and we've got to make sure that we seize them, and that's one of them, but there are others too.
And talking about others, football very close to your heart, of course, and particularly the team in blue. And again, some exciting developments, both in terms of the legacy project at Goodison Park and then Bramley Moor. Now, planning applications have gone in. Again, we've had a number of conversations and events talking about how great that new stadium proposal was looking and the benefits that was going to generate to North Liverpool. Has that progress been put on pause, or are we still having conversations and taking that particular initiative forward?
I think it slowed it slightly, but you know, there's still people working behind the scenes, and there's still people doing all of the things that need to be done. So you know, I don't envisage any huge delays in. You're right that the planning application has been submitted. That's going through our processes now. I have to say, yesterday I heard that one of the warehouses that down by Brandymore, facing Brandymore, that was due to be considered to be a hotel has been listed with a grade 2 listed tag. You know, right. So it's no wonder I've got nowhere. But you know, the fact is that, you know, there's probably about 10 similar type warehouses. So that will have a huge impact on what we're trying to do with the 10 streets. You know, of warehouses that we're trying to look at either demolishing or you know, or developing or listed. It's a nightmare for us. But in terms of you know, the feedback that I'm getting and receiving, is that everything is progressing. I mean, clearly it's a worrying time, isn't it, for football clubs in terms of, you know, the finance and stuff and what have you. And I have regular dialogue with Farhad Moshiri. He's anchored off the south of France somewhere in his yacht when he rings me. But you know, things that are not being slowed down too much. But it is a concern for them, obviously, you know, with the lack of income coming in, the potential of losing television right money because there's no games being put on, sponsorship, all of those things, the players' wages still being paid at the rate. So they're concerned with all of that. But I doubt very, very much whether this is going to have any influence or any impact on the stadium progress. I said as much a couple of weeks ago at the start of this, and I still remain, you know, quite optimistic. Again, I spoke to Denise Baxendale a couple of days ago, and things are, you know, things are progressing. Similarly, you know, Liverpool were talking to us about doing not just the extension of the ground, but also about doing a hotel, train and stuff, whatever. That's just, it's paused for now because of where we are, and that's understandable, isn't it? You know, for people to take stock a little bit. But as I said, with the stadium, I can't see it slowing things down that much at all.
Okay. And just one other significant strategic hub for the city, and again, a business that was going gangbusters, really, and you have got to feel for them. Liverpool John Lennon Airport. The city has obviously got a stake in that business as well. So what are you hearing from those in the aviation industry, Joe, and Liverpool in particular?
Well, look, at the end of the day, you're right that for us, you know, the good thing for us, for Liverpool, I'm talking about from the council's point of view, is that the investment that we made in it, we've had back. So, you know, we made money and we've still retained a shareholding in it. So from our point of view, you know, we can't lose. However, you know, it is a concern and it is a worry for the airport and you know, for the aviation industry in general, really, because, you know, whether we like it or whether we don't, you know, Liverpool needs its airport, and that's the reason why we invested in it in the first place, to make sure that we secured it. So, you know, obviously it's a worry, but, you know, I think the airport will come through it, you know, as things start to pick up. When that happens, I don't know. I've seen a piece today about Manchester. You know, Manchester and the airport, the 10 authorities around the airport all get somewhere around about 10, 12 million a year profits from their airport. So they're saying that they're not going to make any profit this year, but they're going to look to claim some of that back from central government. Well, good luck to them, because if they do, we'll be following them to make sure that we put in a claim as well. So it's going to be interesting, but, you know, look, our airport and our city are important to us, as is the events that we do, the cultural sector, the hospitality sector, our hotels, our restaurants, our bars, all of those things. So we'll be making sure that we get behind our airport. We'll be making sure that we get behind that sector, because it's through that sector that's bringing in that investment that we need in the city. So I'm not, sort of overly concerned, but it is a worry, and I'd be, wrong to over-egg it and also to play it down. It's a concern because, it's how people change their mentality, isn't it? And it's about that, how things operate in other countries, and whether, the lockdown in other countries is lifted so people can start flying and going on holidays, that sort of thing. So it's a worry, but it's something that we'll have to watch very closely, Frank. But as I said, we're not dependent on just the airport or on Bramley-Moore. As I say, King's Dock is going. We've got 8. We've whittled down to 8 massive bids to do work on King's Dock. We've got stuff around the marina being put forward for development, and other things happening elsewhere. We're cracking on with the Garden Festival site. We've got a £30 million grant that we've invested in that. Don't forget we bought it for £5 million, and now we're going to be building retail on there as well as housing. That's going to bring more income into the city. So loads of things are happening. Paddington and real interest. As I said, we're so confident in predicting what we're going to be doing that we've talked to investors, and we've got, you heard it mentioned this morning that we're on the verge of signing a non-disclosure with somebody for billions of pounds worth of support and investments. We're talking to the government about a city deal. We're talking about putting forward proposals about how we stimulate growth within the city. So I'm pretty confident that, as I said, we're in a good place. And as I said at the very beginning, when I started, we will come through this, and I've got absolutely no qualms about stating that and stating it loud and clear. We will get through this and come out of it strong.
Now, we all, I suppose, $64,000 question is, when do we think this lockdown will end? I'm sure, like me, you're watching other European countries and how they're starting to emerge from the crisis. Are you getting any indications from government of their thinking, or like us, are you just looking at those press conferences at 5 o'clock and trying to glean some information from them?
Yeah, but I often then switch over to watch The Chase. You usually get more entertainment, more information out of that. Look, I think the fact of the matter is that the fact of the matter is that the governments have been wrong on most everything, haven't they? Let's be clear. We were behind when everybody else was doing lockdown. We were behind with PPE and not organising that. And I have very little confidence, I have to say, in a lot of people, whether it's the scientists, whether it's Public Health England, whether it's the government, and the fact of the matter is that whatever they say is a guesstimate. Really, it's not accurate. Nobody's ever faced it before. Nobody's ever seen how this disease, this virus operates. What worries me is that, the talk about now, I think in Liverpool, we're probably, I think at the peak of infections, and it remains over the next couple of weeks what happens and whether there's, the death rate starts to go down. What worries me is about what happens after it, and whether we just actually try to go back to a sense of normality, and then it starts to rise again. And that's a real concern, it's a real worry. So, my best guess is that, and it's tinged with a lot of hope, is that by sort of September, we can, start to get to a position where people can, in some senses, return back to work. For instance, like in the council, I don't think until we get a vaccine that we can safely say you sit next to each other, in the way that we did. There'll have to be some social distancing. And I think that's going to take us a couple of months to get to that stage. But, the Oxford vaccine announced today, they reckon that the trials for that should be finished by September. If it goes into production, March next year, before you can start then rolling out a vaccine. I do think it's going to be some time before we get to the stage we were 6-8 weeks ago. I do think that. But, I'm just like you in this, Frank, but like them as well, just guess, really, I think. And, all I can say is that there's going to be, as things get a little bit sort of easier, if you like, in terms of the death rate falling, there's going to be a clamour for things to go back to normal. And I think we've got to resist that. And we've got to make sure that everybody stays some discipline within that, some social distancing and some behaviour norms, and whether that's, I think the idea that we wear masks is a reasonable idea and a sensible idea. The only arguments I would have against doing it now is that if it takes away, the equipment from frontline staff, then we shouldn't do it. But that's not to stop people wearing ones that they've made, or in the future, if we get enough PPE coming in, that we can spread that out. But it's not going to be the same again for a while. But it's hard, Frank. It's hard to predict, and I think anybody that claims to know, will be proved wrong. That's why I think it's as has been the case with central government over the last few weeks. It's a hard one.
And just in terms of how the council is viewing the crisis at the moment, and again, I know that you've looked at getting some jobs done that would cause inconvenience to business under normal circumstances. So Roadworks, for example. Is the Strand being done at the moment? I've been locked down, so I haven't been into town. Are those the sort of major works being able to get going whilst we've been away?
Well, there's works going on the Strand, but they're not the actual roadworks. They're the central reservations and stuff. We're putting in new lighting and power and things like that. So it was never planned to be this quick anyway. And even if we wanted to, we couldn't have sped it up anymore because those things needed to be done first. But what we tried to do is other routes. We're working hard on other routes around the city. I think the thing that we have seen though is the lack of the lack of cars going in and the clean air. And you're looking at cities like Milan, and you're looking at even in this country, cities looking at what they can do to remodel the city centres a little bit. And so we're going to have a look at that. We are looking at that at this time to see what we can do. But we've got to get the balance right. We've got to get the balance right, because if for instance we say, oh well, look, we can have more bikes going into the city centre and we can have more pedestrians, that's all well and good. But if that impacts on business and stuff, whatever, and so you've got to make sure that we just get it right, and that we don't do something that has a detrimental impact on the city centre. But equally, we've also got to look at the benefits that we have from less traffic within the city centre, and whether that encourages more people to go into the city centre. Because we've got to maintain that the city centre in terms of the business and business trade and the restaurants and the culture. We've got to protect that. We've got to keep it going, and we've got to make sure that it keeps delivering as it has done in the past.
Joe, I'm conscious that I've been chatting to you for 45 minutes and people are sat patiently watching and been texting some questions in. So let me just go through one or two of these. And I should also say a big thank you today to Sutcliffe and Project Thor for sponsoring today's event. We've got some questions from those guys in a second. But this one's from Peter Lawrence. Good afternoon, Peter, from AI Change Management. the question. Obviously, we'll accept all the help we can as a region from central government, but what can we do for ourselves that builds upon our tradition of getting things done, even when times are difficult?
Yeah, I think, from your point of view, Peter, but also from yours, Frank, and with business as well, is to continue to talk to one another, to look at whether there are opportunities where you can support one another. What I want to ensure that we do in terms of, and I mentioned before about bringing in Metro Dynamics and Mike Emmerich to look at how we come out the blocks and that we're looking at the opportunities to grow. I want to make sure that, you've heard me talk, for years around making sure that we get local businesses and local supply chain involved in growth. And that is going to be very much at the forefront of my plans about how we but welcome and encourage the opportunity for local businesses, whether it's, local architects, whether it's local supply, whether it's local construction companies or whatever, to engage in these schemes that we're talking about. That is social value at its heart, which also means that we get a better bang for our buck. So in other words, the Liverpool pound becomes really strong. So it's my intention to push and drive on with that. And I think that's what Liverpool does, and that's what we did with our building schools for the future. And when we built the 16 schools, we got local supply, local companies, apprenticeships, all of that involved in that. So I'll be leading on that and championing and pushing for that. But I would just urge, companies that are either, here now with downtown, to look at opportunities to support one another and to protect one another. I am always waxing lyrical about the spirit of Liverpool, and whether that's individuals or whether it's businesses, I think we do that really well. And so more of the same, please.
Cheers. Thanks for your question, Peter. Here's one from Neil McAdam from Sedulo. Are there any changes you've had to make during lockdown that you'll be keeping as you found them to be more efficient? So things like video calling, how you share information and engage with people, and your daily routine. Interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, like everybody, it's been a huge shock to the system, and like everybody within the city, I'm struggling in terms of, like my eldest son was diagnosed with cancer just before Christmas, and I can't give him a cuddle. I can't go with him when he's going to Clatterbridge. I can't look after the grandkids while he goes and whatever. My sister's in hospital with COVID-related issues. She's got underlying health problems. I can't be there. I can't go. My other brother's in a care home, palliative care, and I can't go and visit him. All of those things, like seeing your grandkids, I've had to get used to doing FaceTime with them and talking to them. I've also now got, used to doing Zoom and different ways and different things. Sometimes it might take me a bit long to get in there, but eventually I do. So there are things that I've found really useful to do. But I think, the other thing for me as well is that arguably I've just been as busy as I've always been, because sometimes I'll finish a call at 10 o'clock at night, and sometimes that's a conference call. And then, I'll be doing something at 8 o'clock in the morning. But what I've done for myself personally is that I've made sure that I've took time out to do some exercise. And so I'm walking about 4 miles a day. I've got a treadmill downstairs, a pretty decent one, and I've got a cross trainer And then I'm doing some stuff out in the garden. I've got a course out in the garden. I'm lucky that we've got a garden in the back. So, you know, I've power washed the back and done all the flags, and I've power washed the front and done all the front. So I'm trying to keep myself healthy as well. But yeah, I've learned technology and how, but I've also learned how fragile we all are, really, and how much dependent we are on supporting one another as families. And I think, you know, I miss that a great deal. I don't want to go all, you know, religious on people, but you know, I'm a believer in my faith, and you know, I've always had hope, and so I that gets me through as well. And so I've learned things about myself. I've learned things about how strong and resilient I am as a person, because, you know, I've been brought up in a dingle in the South End, and I've been through some tough times, and we'll get through this, I promise.
Quick question here from Sean Keys from Sutcliffe. I think we've touched on this in the conversation, but perhaps a little bit more detail. Can we work lobby at central government to raise the grants bar so that more SME businesses can qualify for grants? I think it goes back to an earlier point that was raised, Joe.
And all I can say, Sean, is that, Sean, we have been raising this, and, you know, Tony Reeves and myself have regular contact with the Whitehall officials, and sometimes with you know, Treasury officials, but also with ministers as well, on conference calls, and these things are getting raised. These things are being asked of government to do. Now, you know, I'd be absolutely telling lies if I said to you that, you know, governments understand the struggles that businesses are facing, and understanding how businesses need to operate and cope during this time. I'd be telling lies if I said they understood. It's difficult to get them to understand, but we'll keep trying, and we'll keep pushing, and we'll keep arguing that case at every opportunity I get, for them to not only do things in the short term, but to look at the medium and the long term to support business. Because, as I said, you know, it's madness, isn't it, to allow businesses to go under, and then, you know, have to lose the income from that the city gets, or central government get, and then to start paying those staff benefits, housing benefits, loss of income tax, loss of national insurance, all of those things. So they surely have to recognise that this isn't just a finger in the dike. It has to be support right the way through this crisis.
Okay. And a follow on from that point, I suppose, this is from Alan Robson from Project Thor. What can we do to support you as a business community? And I think Alan was possibly referring to national government lobbying, but I think perhaps more pertinently, Joe, what we can do perhaps to persuade the combined authority about that conversation we had earlier of the city being a hub.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, look, I mean, I do what I do behind the scenes, and clearly, you know, it has an impact, you know, I'm not underestimating my influence. I'll keep using that influence and making that case and arguing that case. But equally, don't underestimate yours either. You know, collectively and individually, you have an opportunity to shape and persuade and argue for things yourself. And if you see, as clearly you do, that things aren't what they should, you know, be doing or happening with the CA in relation to the funding and stuff, whatever, well, then do something about it. Speak out, speak up, write to the local press, write to the CA about that. That's exactly what we should do. Let's not forget one thing here, is that the combined authority is there to serve you, not the other way around. The combined authority is there to serve you. This is government funding being passported through to the combined authority, devolved, so that they can make a difference. And if they're not making that difference, you should make sure that your voice is heard in pointing that out. That's what it's there for. that's what it exists for, not to do my job, but to do its own job.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for the question, Alan. And here's the final question that I'll put to you from our audience today. This is from Carolyn Hughes, who I know you know well, Carolyn Hughes PR. The most important question of the day, she says, who is Joe's favourite chaser?
Who would I like to? I like Bradley Walsh. The chasers, I probably sure the barrister. I'd go head to head with him. I'd have a go with that.
I thought you were going to say Brandy as a chaser.
Yeah. Trust you, yeah. No, but I enjoy that, usually because I'm watching the start of this press thing, the Downing Street press call, and then when I get a little bit bored of it, which is usually takes somewhere around 30 seconds to 2 minutes, I turn over, you know. But there's a little story about that though, because in the house that we're in now, my mother-in-law used to live with us, and she lived in the basement, so we used to lock her in the basement downstairs. But round about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you know, that period of time, she'd go to sleep, usually either watching the snooker, but she'd pause the chase. And of course, if I'd watched it upstairs, when she went down and she'd put it on, I'd sit there and I'd get all the questions right. And she didn't know. And she used to say to Marg, the wife, "Is that clever, isn't you know?" Dead mischievous. I was not clever.
Listen, Joe, it's always great to speak to you, and I know how busy you are at the moment, more than ever. Just a final message for people who are watching this, particularly, obviously, Liverpudlians.
Well, I know it's tough for businesses, Frank, as well, but remember it's tough for people out of the city as well. And you know, I've just launched the Just Giving page there. We're trying to get money to support the food banks. We've already put in around about £1 million. We're losing £1 million a week, as I mentioned before. You know, no car parking income, no leisure income, and we're still keeping staff on and stuff like that. So times are tough. If you can do anything to help us there. But let me just say to you, you know, I think, as I said, I touched before on the spirit of Liverpool. I touched on, you know, the fact that when we get knocked down, we come up fighting always, and I always have done. And I think, you know, we usually come up not only in a way that only Scousers can, but usually come up a lot stronger as well. And I predict that's exactly where we'll be. So, you know, if there's anything that you think we can help you with, you know, and that's even individual cases, then let Frank know, and then we'll see what we can do. Not promising that we'll be able to solve it, but at least ask, and we'll guide you or signpost you onto where we'll get help. But we're all in it together, and I promise you we'll all come through it together. So keep your chin up, keep smiling, and I'll look forward to having a conversation with you in another few weeks. As always, I enjoy it, and whether it's actually in another Zoom or whether it's in another room somewhere else, we'll do it, and I look forward to it.
Joe, great to speak with you as always. Keep safe, mate. Catch up soon.
Take care.